Good evening, you're watching Estuary TV News. Coming up, international rescue. We get some first aid from the Red Cross. And jet power. We look at plans to replace a fountain in Hull. And I'll be talking to Richard Morris, giving us a roundup of the weekend's news stories. Welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Richards. First of all, it's over to Dan Kemp for the news headlines.
Hello there. A church in Hull is celebrating after receiving millions of pounds for regeneration. Holy Trinity in Hull aims to raise £4 million for a regeneration project, which aims to be completed in time for Hull's Year of Culture in 2017. So far, the church has raised over £2 million through donations from individuals from all over and fundraising activities. Johnny Bottomley, fundraising officer for the church, outlined why people have donated.
We've reached over £2 million so far. That's through the generosity of people in the area and also outside the area. It seems that people get what we're trying to do here and people just want to contribute towards. There's a lot of people that want to see Hull do well. Hull is a place which is kind of forgotten, but this is the type of project which can bring Hull back to life, as well as many others that are happening throughout the city.
And you can hear more about those plans later in the week. Staying in the city, the Highways Agency have promised to use their best endeavours to ensure Hull has a bridge across Castle Street by Easter of their City of Culture year. Hull City Council has pledged its full support to the Highways Agency in their efforts after the government gave assurances that the new bridge will be completed. The new bridge will allow tourists to cross the busy section of the A63 from the city centre to the fruit market and marina. A Driffield cyclist has been left in a critical condition following a collision with a car. A 51-year-old man from the town was struck outside Yorkwell Pigpro between the B1249 and the village of Killam at around 9:50 a.m. last Saturday. He was found by a passing motorist before being airlifted to Hull Royal Infirmary. The car involved is believed to be dark in colour and the driver is believed to have left the scene without leaving details. School children from some of the people have been taking part in a litter pick at the weekend. The children from Stamford School in Laceby were taking part in a wider initiative as part of the Keep Britain Tidy campaign and aims to give communities a sense of community pride while keeping littering in check. It formed part of a wider clean-up weekend, which in turn was replicated nationally.
Yes, I've done these in the past and they've always been very successful. And what happens is the children go home and tell the parents, and the parents think, OK, we'll pick up. Or when they're taking the dog out for a walk, they also pick up the dog mess as well. So it's an improvement and it's a fantastic way of getting the message across.
That's all from me for now.
The Red Cross is a familiar sight in disaster zones and humanitarian crises around the world. It's been active internationally since 1863, but less famously perhaps, it also runs local services. Dave Nunn went along to one of those services, a first aid class, to find out more.
The Red Cross is a huge international organisation, but it also does a lot of work in the local area, something which many people may not be aware of.
Well, the Red Cross is a huge organisation. It's a huge voluntary organisation. I think the thing that people know most about is our work abroad, so we respond to people in crisis. And we do lots of work in this country as well from our office in Hull.
Like its operations abroad, the Red Cross runs a huge variety of local services to cater to a wide variety of people in cities like Hull, in all kinds of situations. Again, the charity stresses the importance of what it does on a local level.
We run our independent living service, so we go and visit people in their homes after they've been discharged from hospital. We have our mobility aid, so we lend people wheelchairs. We have our lovely FES vehicle, our fire emergency service, which helps people if they've been left after a fire and it comes along and it's fully equipped with clothes and dog leads and baby formula, all sorts of things. We're a big fundraising organisation. We have our retail services. We have our event first aid. We have our Red Cross training, so we do accredited first aid. And we have our everyday first aid, which is my service.
Volunteers are vital for all services the Red Cross provides, like the first aid classes, and there are no shortage of them volunteering on a local level.
Our volunteers are fantastic. We have volunteers who have been with us for years, 30 odd years, and we have new volunteers coming through all the time. So at the moment I've got 6 new volunteers that are in various stages of training. So we're very lucky that way, and I think because we are a well-known and popular organisation, people like to come and volunteer and work with us.
Richard Morris is here to bring us up to date on the weekend's news. Richard, what's been going on?
Thank you. Well, first of all, in the Scunthorpe Telegraph, North Lincolnshire, they're planning a major shake-up of school hours, apparently. This is off the back of, I remember a couple of weeks ago I discussed with you how Scunthorpe and North Lincolnshire Council had put a lot of money into new schools and new building projects. This is part of an £11.5 million plan for Baysgarth School, which is having a load of new rooms and that kind of thing built.
That's in Barton, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, but obviously covered by the North Lincolnshire Council area. And they're obviously planning a new school for January 2017, but the school will start at 8:30 and finish at 2:30 every day. It's a very French system of operation, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, no, I mean
the French education.
No, I mean the French start school incredibly early, and I mean all of the data that I've ever read said that teenagers should actually start school later and actually finish school later, because that's when, you know, the sort of teenage brain is
when
awake.
their brains are active. They always lie in the morning, don't they? Quite
Yeah,
rightly.
and so apparently it's, I don't know, that just seems a little bit odd to me. And obviously there's been a number of concerns from various parents saying, well, I'm not back from work at 2:30. But apparently though they can stay on. They can stay on in the school afterwards. So
well, presumably there's the afternoons filled with games and sports and various other activities, and music and theatre.
There's all kinds of things. I mean, they're also looking at enrichment and intervention afternoons and all kinds of things like that. Like, you know, there's a number of like pastoral activities that the students can do of an afternoon if you have to stay on, you know, past this 2:30 time. But obviously it'll be interesting to see if that system sort of catches on around the rest of the country. I know obviously there's been a number of schools which have said that they'd like to change their, you know, their working hours, but they've never sort of quite got to it. So it'd be interesting to see how this, you know, might be something that we have to cover.
So what time would the new school day start?
At 8:30. So, and they finish at 2:30, although they insist that even though it's shorter hours, they'll still get the same amount of learning in.
But, okay, all right, thank you.
Apparently so. And apparently a plan B is needed if Castle Street footbridge is not ready for City of Culture in 2017. This is reported in the Hull Daily Mail. Councillor Martin Mancy has said that he's getting quite concerned, he's extremely concerned about the delays that they've so far seen from the Highways Agency. It looks as though this footbridge, which was planned, as an upgrade to Castle Street, etc., may not actually be ready in time, and obviously they want it ready for City of Culture.
Well, a bit of a worry there, Richard.
Indeed.
Thanks
Thank you
very much. You're watching Estuary TV News. A little later, we hear some reflections from the Reverend Philip Stevens of the Wolds Group of Churches, and as ever, Dan Kemp will bring you all the sports news. The Avenues area of Hull still has a beautiful fountain on most roundabouts, but there's a gap where one was removed in the 1920s. Now a group of residents is hoping to change this, campaigning to fill the void. James Dunn brings you more.
This is one of the old and ornate fountains in the area of Hull known as the Avenues. But just up the road, the roundabout looks like this. Its fountain was removed after falling into disrepair many years ago.
About 1926, we have a photograph of children climbing on it, and it was cast iron and it was rotting and bits were missing, so the council took it out. They took out the roundabout so that traffic could go through a lot easier. And then basically nobody knew who had the right of way here, and there were a few crashes, so after a while they they put the roundabout back in. And now we've got nettles and old lavender.
Now this campaign group is working to get a new fountain where the old one once stood, but it won't come cheap.
They don't. It's going to cost us in excess of 80,000. We've raised 21,000 so far through various fundraising activities. It's very hard to raise large amounts of money through fundraising. We really could do with a few business sponsors with 4-figure sums to donate. That would be lovely.
They've even built a wooden replica of what one might look like that's proven very popular with passers-by.
So we made it it's nearly as big as the real one will be when we've got it. We painted it black and we put it out here usually the first couple of weekends in July and the week in between, so that people can see what it's like. And it's Avenues Open Gardens then, so there's loads of people coming round and they all come and have a look, and people love it, and they really say we ought to have a fountain. You get people coming around shouting from their cars, why haven't we got a fountain?
So far, the group has around 20% of its fundraising target, but if they want to turn the taps back on here at the end of Victoria Avenue, they'll need to get the money flowing first.
Margaret Lake joins me now from the Health and Wellbeing Collaborative to talk about the fact that this month, March, is Ovarian Cancer Month. Margaret, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Ovarian cancer, this month particularly. How big a problem is ovarian cancer?
Ovarian cancer is quite a big problem. We get about 5,500 cases every year, of which we also get about 3,500 deaths. So it is one of the cancers that we need to get people more aware of so that we can diagnose earlier.
And so that's how, in comparison to other forms of cancer, we know cancer is the biggest killer of people, it's closely followed by heart disease, but in comparison to other forms of cancer, how lethal is it? How many people does it kill? Is it one of the worst?
It's probably not one of the worst, but it's not, unfortunately, because of the numbers that we have, it's not one of the bigger cancers, but it also means that we do get quite a lot of deaths from it. It's not far behind lung cancer as far as that's concerned, but it's about the 8th cancer in the list, if you like.
And what are the symptoms? What are the signs?
Feeling bloated, particularly over a long period of time of maybe about 3 weeks, constantly feeling bloated. We can all feel a bit bloated after one meal, but it shouldn't happen all the time. Feeling tired, loss of appetite as well, or going to the toilet more frequently.
And of course, if you have those symptoms, the thing to do is get straight to your GP, I take it.
Yeah, the sooner we can go to see the GP, the better. And some people do feel as though these symptoms are quite mild and something that they've had maybe before on an odd occasion. But if it's happening regularly, we need to be able to go along to see the GP and not feel as though we're wasting their time. It's important.
And what sort of people, what sort of women are most likely to be vulnerable to this?
Tends to be over 50 years of age, although there are some cases that are younger than that, but the majority are over that sort of age.
And are there any causes? Is there anything that triggers this condition?
It's very difficult to actually say a specific thing, but the risk factors are the sort of lifestyle, smoking, alcohol, and sometimes there is a family history. So if there is a family history of ovarian cancer, then it should be checked out.
Well, that's the point, I suppose, isn't it? It's such a terrible lottery because whatever we can do with lifestyle and things like that, you can't beat the genetics.
Not if it's a genetic strain, but there are more than one form of cancer. We clump them together as one particular organ, but in actual fact there are lots of different cancers within that. So although we say ovarian cancer, there are several different kinds, and there's only a small percentage that are hereditary. The rest are cancers that might be for other reasons.
Caused by external factors, as it were. So if people can get to the doctor early enough, what help is available?
Well, of course there is surgery, and we have 2 ovaries, so sort of sometimes that doesn't mean that we can't have children if we're under childbearing age. There's also chemotherapy and radium therapy, and they're quite successful as long as we catch it early enough.
But that's absolutely the point, isn't it? That you've got to get it early. That's
the point I want to really get over today, is that we need early diagnosis. If we got diagnosis early, we could save at least 500 lives from ovarian cancer just by diagnosing earlier.
And so it's just a matter of getting people to doctors as quickly as possible. Margaret, please don't go away. We'll come back and talk some more about this in a moment.
Thank you.
Time now for some more weekly reflections, this time from the Reverend Philip Stevens of the Wolds Group of Churches.
I've just come back from New York, where I visited the 9/11 memorial at Ground Zero, and it's an incredibly vivid memorial. It is based on the footprint of the original 2 towers. All the way around the plot, you see a bronze parapet with the names of the 2,977 people who died engraved on them. But from there flows into a pool, a deep pool, a great cascade of water. And then right in the middle of those pools, there's a further pool, and the water cascades down again into a void. There's something very moving about it, very, very atmospheric, but it speaks of the futility and the pointlessness and the hopelessness of that momentous event, which has done so much to influence international affairs over the last 14 years. There aren't many symbols which stand for despair, but I felt a despair and a hopelessness there. We're just coming up to the Christian celebration of Good Friday, and the symbol of the cross, on one level, is a symbol of despair. The killing of the Son of God symbolises the rejection of everything that's good and lovely and beautiful and true in this world. But the cross also has a hopefulness about it, because we see it through the prism of the resurrection. That love which God has for us cannot be quenched, cannot be killed, never ends. It overcomes everything which is full of despair in this world. And for that we give thanks this Good Friday.
Margaret Lake is still with me. Margaret, Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. What have people been doing? How have people been trying to raise awareness of the disease?
Well, there has been the Be Clear on Cancer campaign that's come out on main TV and in some newspapers and magazines. But locally, we've had our volunteers out, and they're out again tomorrow. There's an Eve Appeal tea party between 10 till 2 down at the boating lake in Cleethorpes. And our volunteers there, what they do is they hand out leaflets and some little freebies, but they actually engage in people so that they can talk and say the sort of things that I've said today, and try and encourage people, if they have got a symptom, to go along and see the GP. They do some great work, our volunteers.
How many of them are there? How many volunteers do you use?
There's about 8 that do women's cancer, but within the Cancer Collaborative we've actually got about 50 volunteers that do various different cancers, not just ovarian, and they do some sterling work.
Well, I was going to ask, because of course there are ovarian cancers, specifically a female cancer, and various cancers are specifically for one sex or the other, depending on the relevant organs, as it were.
Yeah.
But there are so many cancers that are universal to both sexes. Is there a particular emphasis on one set of cancers rather than another?
We try not to do that, but on the other hand, there are obviously cancers that have more cases, so things like breast cancer, cervical cancer, bowel cancer, prostate cancer, they have quite large numbers. When you think that bowel cancer has something like 45,000 cases a year, it's much more than the ovarian cancer we were talking about earlier. So we do find that there's a lot put into that, both in research and also in trying to raise awareness.
And of course, there's every month there's an emphasis on a different form of the disease.
Yeah, most months there is a different site that is actually emphasised, and the Be Clear on Cancer campaign that the government do is actually sort of the one that tends to lead that, and they will keep changing their adverts.
But it strikes me that there are more than 12 kinds of cancer, and there are only 12 months in a year. You're going to have to share some, aren't you?
Yes, because this month has also had a bit of prostate cancer as well, but we concentrated on ovarian this year. We did prostate last year at this time of the year.
So what would be, I mean, let's just to be fair to the chaps, we talked about the symptoms that you might recognise from ovarian cancer that should send you to a doctor as quickly as possible. What, for instance, would be the symptoms of prostate cancer that might make a chap want to go and talk to his GP?
Prostate cancer tends to be problems with passing urine, so it tends to be that the men are getting up, going to the toilet more frequently at night, which is usually why the wife or partner is getting them to see the GP, which is good. But they have sort of also urgency and can lose weight, which is a symptom for most cancers, that you can be weight loss without trying. So that's another one.
My father had prostate cancer for about 10 or 12 years, although it didn't do him any harm in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that the medicine that he took just made him feel constantly cold.
There's a possibility, although the medication, I mean, now tends to be that we give injections that tend to sort of not give quite so many symptoms. All the time, the medications are actually improving. So, and with prostate cancer, it isn't always operated on now, whereas 20 years ago you'd have had an operation for it, which was really horrendous. That happens still sometimes, but not very often. We can treat it now with medication.
And on the whole, doctors would prefer to use medication rather than surgery because it's just safer and less invasive?
Yes, yeah. And it gives less complications afterwards as well.
Margaret, thank you very much for coming in. Time now for the very healthy Dan Kemp and the sport.
Hull City came back from 2 goals down against the Premier League leaders before eventually losing 3-2. Chelsea scored 2 early goals, but 2 in as many minutes from Ahmed El Mohammadi and Abel Hernandez sent the Tigers in level at the break. Loic Remy came off the bench in the second half to score the winner, and City remained 3 points clear of the drop zone. Elsewhere, Scunthorpe United lost 3-1 at Rochdale. Kevin Van Veen with the only goal in that defeat that sees the Iron just 1 point above the relegation zone. Grimsby Town are back up to third in the conference with a 2-1 win over playoff rivals Eastleigh. Strikers Palmer and John Lewis each netted for the Mariners, who are still 6 points adrift of the league leaders. And North Ferriby United drew 1-1 at Brackley Town. They're now 7 short of the playoffs with a game in hand. And the side are just 6 days from walking out at Wembley Stadium for the FA Trophy final. They'll face over Conference Premier side Wrexham in the showpiece event on Sunday, and Villagers manager Billy Heath believes a tight defence is key to getting off to the best possible start.
That's your starting point. That's your starting point. Whatever you've got to have a strong defence, and you're looking to get a clean sheet whatever game you're playing in. So yeah, we know we've got to keep it tight against them, especially early doors. We'll have to keep it tight. But the goals seem to be flowing a little bit more now. We've gone from getting 1s to sort of like 2s, 3s now, which is always good.
In Rugby League, Hull KR lost 2016 at the Widnes Vikings yesterday, and Hull FC lifted themselves off the bottom of Super League on Friday night. They won 33-22 to the Catalans Dragons. And in ice hockey, the Hull Stingrays have secured an Elite League playoff place when they'll face the Braehead Clan. And that's all for the sport.
Thanks very much, Dan. That's all we have time for today, but thank you also to Richard for the weekend roundup and to Margaret Lake for talking about ovarian cancer. If you have a story for us, then please go to our Facebook or Twitter pages. Details are on the screen. Email news@estuary.tv or phone Grimsby 31553. Until tomorrow, good evening.
Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. A mainly sunny start across the region, showers becoming more widespread and locally wintry, especially over high ground. Feeling cold with a maximum temperature of 7 degrees. Wednesday mostly fine and dry with some light winds.